a disastrous morning leads to a tip-off that could be just about anything. Who knows what's coming up next? We'll talk a little Gordon Hayward, I know that. Phrases I wish would disappear from the sports world and elsewhere. It's all coming up next. Boom, 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 boom. By the way, is Internet Explorer the worst product ever? Boom, 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 boom. You read the Vanity Fair and Steve Ballmer, and you begin to believe Microsoft is as bad as they say. Boom, 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 boom. But I can't get Chrome, and I can't get Mozilla to read my YouTube video, so the crazy ones, you that watch me, lose my mind on this, can actually see it. Boom, 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 boom. All right, so I am a total creature of habit. Most of you probably know that. I broke the pattern today, and I'm proving that that was a big mistake. The story is that I had a chance to go riding this morning at 6:30 with a bunch of people that I really wanted to ride with and do a ride I wanted to do, and that would have meant getting up at 5:30 to do tip-off, and I love you, but not to do tip-off at 5:30 in the morning. So I was like, no problem. I'm going for a short 2.5-hour ride, and then I will come back, and I will do tip-off. And I came back and quickly got put on an errand, and then did that errand, and then I came back and started having computer problems, and then I had to leave because I got sent another thing, and then I got an email from a friend that was fairly, tragic. I mean, it's all right, I hope. It's actually bad, but I don't want to talk about it. So I jumped on the phone and talked to them, and it's fine. I mean, well, it's not fine, but don't I'm not, whatever, you got it. And it's now 12:12. I'm having my coffee. My day is a mess, and I have nothing to do. I have screwed up a day where I have nothing to do. My ride was great. How's that? So I hope you're good. And of course I had to plug in my Strava. Do you guys all know about Strava? Strava is ruining the cycling world, or making it awesome, depending on your point of view. For those of you that don't know what Strava is the social network, and don't try to follow me on Strava because I won't let you, because I don't want you to know how fat and slow I really am when I bike. Strava is a social networking for cyclists and runners, and it's cool in the sense that you can take your little Garmin device or whatever and plug it in, and then it downloads whatever ride you just did. And if you're not a cyclist, you're really bored, but this story gets funny. Well, at least gets amusing. And so you can compare all your rides, right? So what it's done is and then people put in certain segments of rides. Like I climbed to Royal Street today, which is up to Deer Valley, and so I can go check, and I got a PR. And it's so funny because you come back from your ride and you plug it in immediately because you're like me and you're totally addicted to this thing. And you go, and I was like, yes, I got a PR. Okay, personal record, whatever. So, who cares? Really? What's the point? I don't know. But somehow you get totally into it. You get into it to such a point. The other day I was climbing a mountain bike trail, and this guy comes barreling down. And the rule is that the uphill traffic has the right of way. So the guy's coming down, but he's flying. And he's in his whole gear and his get out and his whole thing. And so I kind of pull off because I'm not convinced he's going to stop. Well, he does eventually stop, and we could have a debate at some later date, which is irrelevant of whether he would have stopped in time or not. So I'm gassed because I'm going up a hill. So I take a second to kind of recollect. I've gotten off my bike now, and I am going to start up again. I don't say anything to the guy. I kind of keep my head down. I barely make facial contact. I'm not looking to make a friend. I don't care. And as I'm pedaling away, he goes, "You're welcome." You guys know me well enough. I had a nasty retort of thank you for removing all doubt that you're an a-hole. So I continue. I'm like, what the heck was his problem? Are you serious? What is wrong with people? We're out in nature in the aspen groves. It's gorgeous. And I figured it out. It's because he's what's now called as a Strava hole. And that is somebody who is so obsessed with their Strava times that they don't ride for enjoyment anymore. Everything has become what my Strava time is. I got to get my Strava time. And so this guy ends up, I'm convinced of it, was coming home, and his descent time was ruined by the fact that I waited for 35 seconds. 30 seconds is a long time on a trail, but that's the story. I've heard stories that people in California are riding behind people, and when they come up on them, they yell, "Strava, Strava." I've got a buddy the other day who I'm convinced solely did a ride to get 2 segments of a Strava time. didn't actually go out to do a ride and enjoy himself, and then how you do on those segments actually. No, he just went and did 2 segments to get his best time. It is, I mean, in one sense, it's really cool because you're on a long ride and it keeps you motivated and it keeps you going and you can see your progress and all those things. But on the other end, it is completely an example of how you get people too much data and too much information and too much competition, and the male ego will just totally destroy itself. The disaster is when someone makes this for ski slopes. When someone creates this for skiing, skiing is going to become the singularly most dangerous sport on the face of the planet because everybody is going to be going at full blast. All right, so anyway, in the rambling tip-off that's supposed to be done at 7 o'clock in the morning, that's being done at 12:12. I got a huge collection of awesome questions from all of you guys, and I appreciate it. By the way, one of the things that caught me today is, and if any of you are smart enough to know my Google Chrome and my Mozilla will not recognize my YouTube camera, only Internet Explorer, and I don't like Internet Explorer. It simply clogs everything up. So if anyone knows why that is, I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. I'm working on a project a little bit where I'm going through teams, trying to do by division, and I figure out what their possessions are going to be. I kind of get into 100 possessions and then use their past performances of points per possession and make a rough estimate of what that player averages points per possession, and put them all together and get me a final number of what I think their offensive will be. It's hard because you got guys like Harrison Barnes and Dantas Montejunas on Houston and trying to figure this out. But so I'm trying to do it and to see, and it's hard to guess like how Klay Thompson's going to progress and crazy things like that. So it's a little nutty, and I'm not sure it's really that well done. And Kevin Pelton and John Hollinger will do better versions of it later. But I thought it would just be curious to see kind of where things have adjusted based on some of the moves and etc. So I thought I would. I'm working on that right now. We'll see what happens. And if you got to project some movement, like Favors plays, then Jefferson and Millsap don't get as many possessions, and Jazz offense gets actually less good. So it won't equate for defense, but just kind of looking at it. The other one I'm working on is a Gordon Hayward piece, which is interesting. I'm trying to figure out what to. I mean, Hayward was really great last year. His jump of 5 points a game in his first year and 12 points a game in his second year, and his per 36-minute jump of 11.5 to 14 points a game. Those are big jumps. His rebounding stayed the exact same in his time on the floor. His assists increased. I mean, he had a huge jump last year. And I kind of feel like his career numbers right now, 46% shooting and 39% from three and 79% from the free throw line, I feel like those are pretty accurate to who he's going to be as a player. And I'm trying to figure out if there's something next. I mean, he played 31 minutes a night last year. So I went and ran a bunch of things, and my first one I did without any age requirements was just, minutes played, points rebound. It didn't tell me anything. In fact, it didn't come out well for him at all. And it's so hard to project these guys like Hayward and Favors who didn't get that full second season. I mean, the thing is that Hayward has 66 games instead of 82, and so part of you kind of wants to project, well, what if he taken another step in the final half of the season, and what else could have he done? And and you try. I'm using minutes played. He's played 3,200 minutes by the time he's 21 years old, which is great, but he would have played another. In theory, he doesn't get hurt, so another 16 games at 30 minutes a night, and you have another 480 minutes there, or whatever that. I think that came out right. And now he's suddenly up at 3,700 minutes. And if that were the case, what gets interesting is there aren't that many guys that have played more than 3,700 minutes prior to being 21 years, by the time they turn 21 years old. He gets into some kind of elite company there. I mean, if you run and I did this search. If you run the search on Hayward, yes, this edition of the show is all over the map. But if you run the guy 6'4" to 6'9", who before 21 years old played 3,700 minutes, there are not very many of them, and that's it gets pretty exciting from that standpoint when you start to try to analyze who he is, what he's becoming, all of these kind of things. Now, some of the other stuff is not as exciting. When I did the initial search on this, it didn't come out as well as I would have liked. Because it just didn't narrow it down, and I'm having a very hard time narrowing down who Gordon Hayward really is. If you take just he's played 3,300 and just take it as it is, now you take him between 2,700 and 3,700 minutes played in his career, and there's only about 14, 15 guys who've done it. And it's a Maggette, it's by 21 years old, and it's Maggette, and it's Jordan, and it's some players in there that some C.J. Miles, frankly, came up. You didn't love to see that. It's hard to figure out what his next step is. I'm very kind of flummoxed, frankly, on what I think Gordon does next. Kevin O'Connor made a very interesting comment the other day about that Gordon, because he's so concerned with winning. I think this was on the air. I hope it was on the air, but he made it anyway, so here it comes. That he's so concerned about winning that what he does is he doesn't just go try stuff. He's so concerned that he's going to hurt his team if he doesn't do things correctly, that he won't just go do anything at any point in time. And I think, and so what it means is that he's got to really feel comfortable with a skill set before he goes and does it. It's an interesting way to look at things. So if Hayward had played 37 minutes by 21 years old, but guys between 6'4" and 6'9", there's only 32 of them before that. But James Harden is probably the best comparison. Joe Johnson was another guy. And so you go look at those guys, and Joe Johnson in his career doesn't play much early. Averaged 7 points his first year. He got traded to Phoenix. In his second year, he played average 10, and then 10 again, and then he jumps to 17. Then he goes to Atlanta, where he explodes. So he's not a great comparison. Rudy Gay, who's a similar pick in the draft, goes from 11 points his first year to 20 in his second, playing 37 minutes. And I'm not sure I think Gordon's ever a 30-minute-a-night scorer. So I'm having a hard time finding the guy that gives me some reference point on who I believe and where I believe Gordon Hayward comes out at. The one that maybe is the most interesting is James Harden, who in his first year averaged 10 points a game, his second year averaged 12 points a game, then went to 30 minutes a night and averaged 17 points a game, 4 rebounds and 4 assists. That may really be who we end up seeing out of Gordon Hayward. I'm not sure, and I'll keep working on it, trying to discover that. I got a fabulous list of questions from people the other day. I couldn't appreciate it enough, and I will try to get to as many of them as possible. They have been out of this world good, and I really appreciate it. One asked about Kevin Murphy. He's not going to get a guaranteed deal. I'd be very stunned if he does. He's just going to simply have to come in and earn the spot. I mean, I think that's and other guys are going to be because if you guarantee where we stand right now, if you go guarantee him a deal, then that ends up meaning that nobody else who comes to camp can make a roster spot. So I can't suspect that he's going to get a guaranteed deal. He's just going to have to make the team. And there's really nothing new to report on him. So we'll see. Question about Howard, whether Jefferson does better against Howard or against Bynum. Al has done surprisingly well against Dwight Howard. I don't know why. Maybe the pump fakes and the ball fakes and some of those things, maybe just the set moves. I'm not sure why that would be, but for whatever reason, he has done surprisingly well in that regard. So I appreciate that question. Another one came in was Coach Corbin installed a new defensive scheme last season. How did it work stat-wise, and does he plan to keep it? He does. What's interesting about it is it worked statistically. The Jazz forced teams into taking better shots and did a far better job of drifting people off the three-point line than they did in the years past, and a lot of those types of things. But the end result wasn't great. And that was probably discouraging. Maybe we'll do a better job. There's a fabulous stat if you want to look at it on Hoop Data, which I think will tell you this. And what this is Hoop Data has a stat that's offensive expected field goal percentage. So what that does is it measures the effectiveness of the defense, opponent's effective field goal percentage, and where you force the other team to shoot from. And so, for example, last year, the best in the NBA, the Jazz were the third best in the NBA at forcing where they force teams to shoot from. I should write a larger thing on this. This is a great point by the Jazz. They did a very good job. The problem was twofold. One, teams made an inordinate amount of shots from those spots. Teams should have shot 47.6% effective field goal percentage, and teams shot higher than that. I mean, that's the opponent's effective field goal percentage. Effective field goal percentage, for those who don't know, includes three-point shooting. Last year was 49.2. It should have been 47.6. So while the Jazz were forcing the right shots, they did a good job of getting people off the three-point line. They only allowed opponents to shoot 22% of their shots from three. They keep people off the rim generally. They were not able to get them to miss. So that's kind of a funny. Was that bad luck? Was that who they played? What is that? And in fact, they have a stat called defensive ratio, which is the difference between how well a team defends the shots compared to the shots that they give up, and the Jazz were the fourth worst in the NBA. That might be a very interesting question for Dennis Lindsay, and get somebody news point of view on that and what he thinks about that. But the Jazz did the third best job of anyone in the league of where they forced people to shoot from, but they did the fourth worst of actually defending the actual shots. And then the other angle, of course, is that we just foul an inordinate amount. Now, that got better last year, but we cannot afford to do that again. Again, off Hoop Data, the Hoop Data has a statistic, which is free throw rate, free throws attempted divided by field goals attempted. And we were the third worst in the NBA last year. I mean, you can't be good fouling people at the rate we were fouling people. So we'll see how that plays. But that's the basic. All right. Sorry for the delay. We banged out 18 minutes without me making a total fool of myself here, so I feel good about that. And hope you're good. Thanks for tuning in. Apologize for the delay. We'll be back on regular schedule tomorrow. See ya.